Want to say welcome, brothers.
Yeah,
We're at the
yeah.
Common Humanity Mission. We got Brother Joe Cee here, and what we're going to deal with is we're dealing with the weather, and the weather just knocks things all out the way. But we just keep on moving in spite of. This particular session, we want to deal with or the name of the show, I should call it, even though I don't like the word show. It's about dialogue, um, discussion, exchange, the dialogue, discussion, exchange. And in doing so, learn to hear from the reason from the premise, I should say, and anything you must have is a premise of conversation as we learn to reason with progression, which means we keep on moving in spite of anything that may come our way. And the topic we want to discuss today in dialogue and exchange is dealing with the sophistication of this two-party system here in America, and the difficulty, if there is any difficulty, to be able to distinguish between the two. So once again, we have Brother Joe Cee. Joe Cee, how you doing today, brother?
I'm doing real well. I'm glad to be alive in the midst of delusion, misleadership, and everything that's going on in the world. We are going to come together today and, like you said, talk just a little bit about the two-party system. I'm of the belief that it's two wings of the same bird, and I like to say in my zip code, it's the same shit with two different asses. Excuse me for the expression. And when you have this discussion and when you talk about two parties systems, people lose reasoning. I mean, they are so hyped up on whether they are on the Democrats or whether they on the Republican. And people are so caught up in that they miss really what's going on around them. They miss the woman who can't afford her medication. They miss the boy in school that's living in homelessness. They list, they lose sight of all of the things that are right there in their view, and that's exactly what the two-party system is designed to do. My argument is that people will get so wound up about Trump, and of course he's an abhorrent individual. He's a vile and vulgar individual. But all of this stuff was going on way before him. Do you think slavery was any vile or any vulgar than Trump? I would say that it was way worse. And he's a product of a system, not the system itself. So when you look at the two-party system and a person who does social media or any even if you're having a conversation at the water fountain, it's always about how bad Trump is. And it's never about what your party is doing to address the ills of your neighborhood, and that's very profound in that the confusion keeps people from getting things done. It's me against them attitude, and you don't see that it's devastating everybody. It's devastating the white people in Kentucky and Tennessee that are self-medicating on methamphetamine is devastating and creating hopelessness right here in Sandtown, Winchester, and in parts of East Baltimore and parts of South Philly. And as long as the Democrats win, and I'll take it to the to bring the racial concept into it, and some people don't want to deal with the race concept, but to bring black people into it, I mean, it just is sad and it's amusing when we laugh about whatever the Democrats are doing. I mean, it's like we scored the touchdown, and stuff didn't start getting done until Trump called out Elijah Cummings down there on how filthy the city was, and he didn't interject race in it. As a matter of fact, Cummings and Bernie Sanders has said the exact same thing. But to put the race into clouds the vision of where we should be going as a people.
Mm. So where we should be, where you think we should be going as a people in pertains to uh, the um, the misinterpretation and the misguidance and even the misrepresentation of in dealing with these two wings from the same bird.
Well, like I said, I think that we should be united against the two-party capitalist system. I mean, because it's the parties are in bed with corporations, and it's in bed with the military-industrial complex. So it doesn't really matter which party is in office, and it's all a kind of a clown show. I mean, who would think that a Democratic president who was black and had a Muslim name would bomb seven Muslim countries as opposed to Trump, who shows some degree of restraint in not bombing Iran and trying to get the troops out of Afghanistan and trying to get the troops out of Syria. Now, that is an interesting scenario there. And so the two party system has merged to be one and the same. And so we have to collectively in neighborhoods support each other's business. We have to educate our own children. We have to come together to stand against the system, not against a party. I mean, if you look at the urban areas, it's all controlled by the Democratic Party. And the interesting thing about that, and I catch a lot of hell for this. Get called coons. I get called a Trump supporter, Uncle Tom, and nothing is the furthest thing from the truth. I'm I'm I'm, I'm not anti-white, but I should say I'm pro-black. I believe in black people and the progressiveness of black people and the struggle of my people. So nothing I say is on the coon level to me. But at the same time, we dealing with a party that takes us for granted. That they want your vote, but not your problems. They treat us as a people, in terms of like a mistress, so to speak, where we can vote for you, but we're not going to fix the bad education, the lead in the water, the lead paint, the dilapidated housing. We're not going to fix your neighborhood, but we do want your vote every 4 years. And, me, myself, I never had a mistress, but, I've talked to plenty of women who was the second woman who would get the cold pizza and would never go to the black and gold ball. They don't they we don't get to go to the real circumstances of substance. All we get is some empty symbolism. We'll give you a black president, but why we give you that black president, we're gonna destroy Africa.
Mm.
So it's crazy, and nobody complains about that. But if it's Trump that was destroying Africa, it'd be holy hell.
Mm.
So that's how the two party, I mean, I've been involved in the little 3 card Monte game. I've been involved in the little street scams where the people would come in, bust in, rob the crap game, and then the next day you see the man with the same watch on that he got taken that day. So it all was a setup. So that's what the two party system is. It's a big setup to uh, distract you from what's really going on and how crooked both parties are. So it's interesting that we on this because you look at Joe Biden, who has done everything that they're accusing Trump of doing. He's coordinated with the Ukrainian government, had his killed children get filthy rich, $1 billion from China, which has to be our number one enemy. It has to be because China is looking to get into artificial intelligence. They're not investing their money in wars. They've invested in their infrastructure. They also have built up their lower class to a middle class. So they have to be considered our number one. And why do you think Biden was over there? um, to get money for his children and for them to get military secrets, you know.
Because it says that even Warren, it's known that Warren Buffett and some people who were affiliated with, they got investment in China, Shin Shin. So
Of course,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
where the money
yeah,
is.
yeah, and China producing a lot of millionaires at a higher rate than Americans are.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, because our politicians, both parties, have sold the middle class, sold all of their people down the river. When I was a kid, you didn't have to have a college education. They wanted that, for their kids for a better life. But you could work at a steel plant, you could work in a car plant, you could be a mailman, and you could get your car every 4 years and raise your kids and expound to middle class values. But they exported all of those jobs. And this came under, speaking of the two party system, this started, it really took off. I mean, it started with Nixon dialoguing with China, but as a kid, everything when I went to school with a made in China, made in Hong Kong tape recorder, I got laughed at because it wasn't made in America. But nothing's made in America now because the powers that be have exported um, manufacturing out, and that has allowed for the working class people to be diminished. If you look around certain parts of Baltimore City where they were homeowners and these people were working at Bethlehem Steel and General Motors and was able to buy these houses, and their kids can't keep them. The taxes have taken them, and there's a sense of hopelessness all around. Self medication is going on, and this is all part of the two party system exploiting working class jobs to China, and China has built up their middle class. People are living better. Their infrastructure is much better than ours right now, and as a group of people, we don't see that. We see Trump as the enemy, and not, and this is not to diminish, whatever he's doing,
Yeah,
but he is not the real problem. Our problem was way before him. It'll be if he was to die tomorrow, it'll be probably worse tomorrow.
So it sounds like you also, I'm hearing you saying is that two things. One, I recall when Marcus Garvey was talking about the race thing, right? And he says, respectfully of any political party, you know, I mean, no different what political party you're affiliated with. If you deal with that, you're all right with me, you know. So, and also it reminds me too when we talk about irrespectfully of the Democrat or Republican, but the problem is the system itself. But um, in that regards, I was making a point and I lost my train of thought in regards to oh yes, as long as they were united in regards of the political power united in dealing with the system. I think Dr. King said something that the system, the whole must be born again. The whole structure must be changed. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think he also said that that one of his biggest fears is that he was integrating his people into a burning house, and that goes to the system. The house is burning, and he saw this in 1968. So if you fast forward 50 years later, the system has definitely burned up a lot of our people, and this is the identity politics, and people might not identify with identity politics, but they give you these symbols and empty symbolism to distract you from a system that's burning up.
Yes. When I think of a system, when I think of a system, I think of something that is associated with the word STEM. You know,
Hmm.
and that's what the STEM is associated. So it's something that is systemic. You know what I'm saying? So how would you attack something that is considered to be, systemic? It's like coming from the same root, like a dichotomy. But it's coming from the same root. Does that have to do with one's thinking?
Well, I mean, there's a plethora of things going on there. I mean, with a systemic issue, it's going to take 30, 40 years to have some real measurement in that. But I think there's a couple things that we can do, which is, like I said, is support black businesses, support our own education. And this is something, which always catches a lot of hell when, I think when Trump said, if you don't like where you are, you can go back to where you came from. And I think it's some validity, not into what he said, but there's some validity in exploring other options and other places for us to live that are more advantageous to us on a friendly basis. Because this system uh, needs a revolutionary change. And I don't mean that you have to take up arms, um, but in every aspect, it's not working. Not only is it not working for black people, it's not working for white people, and it's not working for working people. If you're the 1%, it's working for you. But they say land of the free, and when you go in to a Walmart and you go through the line, and the cashier is 55 years old with bad knees, got to stand on her feet 8 hours a day, being hassled by a little young manager. Is that freedom? Is that really freedom? And then she tells you, oh, I got to come back here tomorrow and do the same thing all over again. Like I said, it creates the hopelessness. It creates the self medication. It creates the mental health issues that we have. And so to deal with a system that is so corrupt and money driven that the 1% is, I mean, I'm not a scholar or enough to have all the answers to that. That's deep. But like I said, there's a number of things that we can do to address it, to at least insulate our next generation from some of the heartache that this system would do. And like I said, that's educating our own children, supporting our own businesses, and creating our own business. And we have to be willing to invest in our friends and our friendships, and invest in coming together and creating our own job. And these are nothing new. These are all things that have been talking about since the beginning of us arriving here. Because that mindset came from Africa. And again, like I said, we need to explore going back to the continent, going to Cuba and different places. And there's going to be problems and difficulty everywhere, but in most of the world, you already have universal health care. But these people, in this system here, is so money driven that they are so resistant to having universal health care. Most of the Western countries already have universal health care. In Cuba, the life expectancy for people there is 84 years old. For a black man here in this country, it's like 68.9 years of age that you're supposedly reaching. There's something wrong with a system that is weighing that heavy on a particular segment of the population.
Yeah. There's a guy by the name of Stanley Milligram, who was an American social psychologist. Is known for his controversial experiment on the deal with on obedience. Um, in the book called The Conservatives Without Conscience, it says, to his surprise and to the amazement and dismay of others, Milgram classic experiment revealed that 65% of seemingly ordinary people were willing to subject what they believed to be protesting victims to painful, if not lethal, electric shock, 450 volts of electricity. They did so simply because they were instructed to by a scientist um, dressed in a gray lab coat and sitting on a scientific laboratory. This apparent authority figure ordered that the jolts of electricity be administered to determine if the learner would memorize word pairing faster. Remember things faster. And he pushed increasingly painful electrical shocks. He failed to accomplish the task. Actually, this experiment was designed to test not learning, but rather the willingness of those administering the electric shocks to obey the authority figure. The subjects were told of the about the way in which the shock would take place, was only pretending to experience the pain. In fact, was not being shocked until the end of the experiment. This is my question to you in this regard: is that what is it that people will be willingly to be obedient to the misuse of authority?
Now, repeat that question again.
What is it that people will be willing to be obedient to the misuse of authority?
Well, that depends on people's level of consciousness from my point of view, because there's always distractions to keep you distracted from your level of consciousness. So, if you ask the Jews who their enemy is, they know. If you ask the white man who is the enemy, but we as a people, we don't know who the enemy is. And there's some writer, I can't recall the name right off, that said that we're not trying to change the system. We being black people, that we're just looking for a more comfortable position in the system. So as long as I'm not in that rat infested area, if I'm up here on Ashburton or the Gold Coast or in Northeast Baltimore, I'm fine. I don't have to see that. I don't have to deal with that. But then you also have to take in account that you're just one paycheck away from that. You're one illness away from that. You got to have relatives involved in that. And so, it's kind of hard to say. But every Sunday we get distracted. It's a group of us. We get distracted from society's ills by rooting for our favorite football team. You got people who watch Jerry Springer. You got people who are distracted from their willingness to put something on the line because they are affiliated with something else, and that goes back to the two-party system. As long as I'm against Trump and I'm a Democrat, then I got something to root for, and I'm okay in this system because I'm against this. But the real thing we should be against is the system itself, and so some people have not reached that level of consciousness, and it really is a sad commentary on our political immaturity. Because, like I said, you get smeared, you get name called, and I think it was Socrates who said that in the debate. I can't remember.
Slander becomes the loser. Yeah,
Yeah,
loser.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. People resort to slander instead of debating the facts. So unfortunately, we're so distracted with being on a team or being in this and being in that, that we don't hear the call of what someone is saying. We block it out, and it's a um, it's a phase called it's a term called cognitive dissonance,
Mm-hmm.
and many of us suffer from that. That even when we, in the face of seeing that we've been had and we've been hookwinked, we can't let go of it because we don't want to admit that.
It's a core belief. It's right because I think Einstein said this. He said that a reference about a problem. He says a problem. Um, uh, it cannot be solved by the same level of consciousness that created it. Yes. So yeah. So we got brother Joe Cee. You have any final remarks that you want to share?
Well, I enjoyed the dialogue. I think this is the kind of interesting, conscious, cooperative discussion that needs to be had in people's houses and people's barbershops, at your fraternal organizations, and in any of these kinds of places. Because, like I said, this is an issue that it's going to take education, it's going to take dialogue, it's going to take planning, and it's going to take a change of our political maturity, and that's unfortunately I don't see that happening anytime soon. But all you can do is keep trying to make the world better for your next generation. And I was on a cruise, and the interesting thing about the cruise is that it was a 7 day cruise, and whenever you go, when you have the formal dinner, you have to sit with the same person all 7 nights. So I'm on the cruise and I'm sitting with this Chinese couple, and I was like, man, oh man, I can't sit with my friends. Um, but it was an interesting discussion about learning about his culture,
Right.
and him dialoguing with me. It was a beautiful thing. But this is what was very profound. He said that his people, they plan to win the war, not for themselves, but for their grandchildren.
That's what's up. That's what's up.
And that was very profound. And
Yeah.
he told me this in 2006.
Right. Right. There's a
And look at the world we living in now.
Yeah.
China is positioning itself to be the world dominant power
Yeah.
with artificial intelligence,
Yeah.
with a military, with being a manufacturing giant. And we are complicit in it. And people don't even really know any of this because they so caught up in the team thing, and Trump is the bad guy when it's really much bigger than that.
Yeah, you're right. There's two things come to mind in closing. I think Ho Chi Minh, before he went into for the win to battle, he said we got to educate our people politically so they know what they're fighting for. And then you was talking about there's a African tribe, or I think mostly tribe, I believe it was. They was talking about how are the children. That's how they greet each other. How are the children? Because the children is most important. You know what I'm saying? So I always learn that children are the extension of our parents' social relationships. So it is for the posterity of the future of the children. So yes, I want to thank Brother Joe for this Common Humanity Mission presents dialogue, discussion, exchange, where we adhere to reasoning from the premise of conversation, and as we learn to reason with progression rather than regression, and not too much emotion without having any logic. Until the next time,
It was a pleasure, my brother.
talk to you.
Always,
Yes, sir.
always. Hey, man, I think that probably was, that might be one of your better.